Welcome to the Healing with Love Summit. Step into a world where we choose to move with kindness, love, and acceptance for our neighbors on this planet, no matter their perceived differences. Choose to listen with an open heart. Choose to come from a place of learning and sharing. Welcome. I'm Larissa Russell of Creative You Healing, and I now have with me Tamara Sagathevan. So welcome, Tamara.
Hello, Larissa.
I am so excited to have you. I love our conversations. Love them.
I enjoy speaking to you more than I enjoy speaking to my family. That's a big compliment,
Okay.
not an insult.
And if I was like, if it was my family, I'd be like, well, that's not much of a compliment, but I love that. I love that. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Tamara Sagathevan. I am a South African mixed media artist, and I make quirky, weird, colorful art. It's good art, but sometimes it might not appear so. And I do all of this in Warsaw, Poland, where I live with my partner and my little dog.
Yes. World traveler. You're
Basically.
so global. You're so like,
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah.
people ask me all the time, where have you been in Europe? And I'm like, Poland.
It feels like a lot. South Africa, Poland, you know, I'm over here in North America. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds more amazing than it actually is. Trust me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So we're here to talk about love. And how would you define healing with love? And why is it important to promoting diversity and inclusion?
Okay. Uh, I will probably answer a little bit backwards, but when I think about promoting diversity and inclusion, I automatically think of the components of behavior that makes that possible to include people and to be open to diversity. And those things are empathy, open dialogue, listening, active listening, fellowship, trust. I want to say all of these things that are natural in some way and form, and that it's all things that you don't have to have love to kind of do and bring about. I don't have to love somebody to have empathy with them, but I feel that having all of these things, connectedness, that it will bring a certain ease and understanding to the conversation. And you can do this again without love. By all means, I think it is a human behavior. It's also a psychology or whatever you want to call it that helps you to survive. Empathy is something that helps you to survive in a tribe. So you can do that without love, but love makes it easier. I feel that when you use love for like your guiding compass almost, it is always easier to bring all of those things into play. And once you have empathy and dialogue, etc., it is so much easier for you to do that healing because you can put yourself in the other person's shoes, which is, I think, one of the most important parts of healing anything
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
except a broken bone.
I don't know. I think good energy healing, like, I think that would also help with a broken bone, I have to say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, you're right. I take my mind has been totally changed. I take it back.
When you think about times in your life when you have been maybe not welcomed in areas of your life or um, not had people treat you the best, how have you moved through that has allowed you to be this amazing person that you are? And how has that affected you?
So I feel like I need to say, first of all, I don't feel that I can fully say that I've moved beyond everything. There's a lot of stuff that I don't even remember that suddenly comes up, and I run to go and tell my partner, "Hey, do you remember this time he wasn't there, of course. Do you remember this time in 1996 when I couldn't drink from a water tap?" And it's all of these kind of memories that some of them I've suppressed. So as much as I have moved through it and healed with a lot of stuff, I don't know sometimes how much is hidden. So just want to caveat it that way. What I do want to say is, in terms of love, I grew up believing that love was, it was impossible to hate someone if they were human. And if I had to hate somebody, I was no better than my oppressor. So it came from maybe a place of self-righteousness. But what I do want to say is that all of these things, and I'm going to talk now as a receiver of, um, what is it? Non-inclusiveness. Let's call it non-inclusiveness. There are lots of tactics that might not necessarily be correct in the moment, but that I had to use to get over it. And suppressing is a dangerous thing, but that was something that helped me as a child, yeah. But the other thing that would help me would be like, I don't hate, because then I'm no better than that person. And again, self-righteous, maybe not healthy, but that was my coping mechanism. Now, as I'm getting older and I have more tools at my disposal, if I'm not welcome, my first, this is a top tip, everybody. Look at the person absolutely confused and with a lot of whimsy in your face, like, what are you doing? And it throws them off every single time. And that disengages, I think, a lot of anger. And when somebody can either laugh at how you look or what you're doing, or say, oh, why is this person confused? It just creates that space for you to also rein in yourself so you don't throw any punches, but also to have that little conversation. So I don't really feel like I'm answering your question in totality, but for me, it is definitely using humor, trying to create that space, and also understanding that I might be tired today because I had a lot of stuff to deal with. And if I'm tired, I'm very sorry. I was gonna say, but but I'm very sorry, but I don't have to deal with your nonsense today. And hopefully there's an ally behind me or next to me that's actually gonna pick up this torch and say, hey, don't worry, I'll burn it down. You go to sleep. And that's kind of the thing. I think that I just want people as receivers and also maybe even, I don't want to say givers, but people who witness non-inclusive behavior, just also understand that sometimes people are tired and it's totally okay for you to, in that moment, maybe not censor yourself, but hold the torch. Solidarity, that's the word. Um, I know I'm going a little bit off track here, but I've used a lot of like angry words as I'm speaking. And I think this confuses people a lot. And it's a little bit about what I was afraid of maybe coming and speaking as well, that we're talking about love, and love is gentle and love is kind and whatever else you were made to read in school. It is all of those things. But love is also sometimes like a holy rage, I feel. And I feel that when we go and we approach people like, oh, we should all heal with love, and you see somebody that's angry, and you're like, oh, but we're supposed to be loving. But instead of doing that, in that moment, your love should help you feel some empathy for the person and understand that this rage that they have, or this pain that they have, or this anger that they feel is either brought about by tiredness or all of this levels and strata of trauma. And it's absolutely valid. Validate your people.
I
And
love
we are
that.
all each other's people here.
We are. Yeah. And I want to speak to that because I think that's just like so brilliant what you just said. Because we are taught, especially as women, that anger is a no, like we're not allowed to be angry, right? And if we're angry, we're out of control, we're hysterical, we're all the things. And anger is a motivator. We have a right also to be angry, especially if we're mistreated. And so a, suppressing anger, I think, does more damage if you have out of control anger. Um, well, honestly, anger comes from so many different things, fear, and mostly fear. If you're hurting other people, maybe let's put it that way. If you're violent with other people, that's different. But if you're expressing your anger at a situation, absolutely, we need to love on you a little bit more because there is something that needs to be fixed. There is something that needs to change. We can't just be like, they're angry and push them aside because that's not helping the problem, right? It's not helping us heal. And I think that anger is a motivator to heal. That's why I'm doing this summit. I got angry at the response I got to asking people to be more loving. What?
How dare you?
How dare I ask you to come from a place of love and be kind to people? How dare I? Exactly.
Are you going to ask people to shower next, Larissa? You're out of control.
True. And
Well,
yes.
I also think like when you're saying anger, you can get addicted to anger, and I understand that, but that's not what we're talking about. But when I see somebody that's angry, especially if I see some of their other stuff, and I know that's generally not their disposition. Like, people don't want to be angry. I don't think so. And when you see somebody being angry, I sometimes think that it's either they've reached the end of their tether, or they have learned that in this world, sometimes you only get some dialogue, even though it might be negative at times when you're angry. Like, if you go to a store and you throw a tantrum, that's when you're going to get a service or feedback. I don't do that, but I do understand why some people feel that that may work. And I'm not saying that's what all people who are being treated badly are doing, but I can understand that that behavior sometimes works, or I don't know, that's what they want to do. But it's not your, I don't feel that when you see somebody angry, that it's your job to, as you said, like go away or shy away from them. It's your job to love on them so hard that they feel that they are not insane in their anger. Because I think when you feel like you are insane in your anger, that makes you more angry and maybe makes you slightly insane. It is, I have it in black and white. I mean, there's laws and there's pictures that I came from apartheid, right? This was a horrible system. But sometimes I think, am I crazy? Because I'm saying something and somebody doesn't acknowledge or hear that. And I'm like, I might be crazy because it's impossible that this person can't see that point of view. But I just want to say, very much less in this space. Sorry that wasn't your experience with the email, but with me, I find increasingly I have, and I hope this is okay to say, like white allies, which is so validating for me because I never really had that before. I can have this uncomfortable conversation with you, and I don't think you're uncomfortable, and I don't think I am either, but it is uncomfortable. And I feel safe. And I've got a lot of people here that have given me that. And that's just probably one of the other things that attributes me being able to move past and also dig into some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, be a friend, be an ally.
Yes. Yes. And I do believe that if we have a place where we can lend our voice, or not even our voice, sometimes just our platform, right? Because when we're silent, and complacent, we're we're saying, yeah, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this. And I'm
Yeah.
not okay with this. I'm not okay with the way things are. I know that there's some people I'm not going to change their mind. And back to the email, I had some amazing people like on my list that emailed me really beautiful things. I was just kind of shocked at, you know, the messages I did get asking people to come from love. Please, like, can we just be nice to each other? No. But in
Not
that,
today.
not today, exactly. And in that, you know, we're not going to change people's minds. I'm not doing this, having these conversations. And yes, they're difficult, as in people don't talk about these things. People don't want to talk about these things because if I don't see it, it's not happening. And so bringing it into the light makes it real. And I think it's really important to have these conversations for that very reason. It is very real for people, and everyone has different experiences. And I think a lot of people who maybe don't say the nicest things think that they're coming from a maybe not love, but they're coming from a place of trying to help you. Maybe uh, I'm a little lost on that one, but we all have our judgments. I know I'm judging people who are not nice. I judge you. I judge you for being mean to people.
I think I think people who do that, like you said, they come from like they're trying to help you by putting you down, like just knocking you down a peg, or being a truth teller. And again, if I can ask somebody to engage empathy for me, I might not always be able to do it, especially when I'm depleted. But when I'm not depleted, I engage empathy for them. And I think if you feel or believe that you need to knock people down or do whatever you need to do in order for that person to better themselves or get over it, well, that's probably what you've learned in your life. And I really feel for you. That must have been so difficult and so hard because I never had that. I grew up in a very loving environment. And again, sure, you might believe your environment was loving in this case, but nobody had to knock me down in order for me to be better or achieve or push myself. So I don't mean this from a place like, oh, I feel sorry for you. I mean, I genuinely feel for you as my fellow human being. And like that's also what I would like to advocate for anybody who is on the receiving end. On the days that you can engage empathy, engage it for the person that's giving it to you too, because it is so free. Um, it's also very difficult. I think people might not realize it on both sides. You are asking for a lot sometimes. But the more you practice it, the easier it becomes because more and more, I also think that love is a practice.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah, you're born and somebody loves you, hopefully, but sometimes I think using my mom as an example, our love has definitely gotten stronger. It's changed and it's evolved. And that's my mom. So I would imagine for everybody else that love can be a practice. Um, I don't know if we're not answering any of your questions, but
We're having a conversation, and I think that's the most important
yeah,
part.
just payback for that mail you sent, Larissa. Um, when you said like use your platform for good, that's something that it really it opens up like two little channels in my chest. And one is like, I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And the other one is like, oh, Tamara, you little hypocrite. Because when people open their platform for me, I am being very honest. I go in with a lot of like stress and strife. And I even just said this to you before we started the conversation, because I feel that I am going to be the singular uh, either Indian person or South African person or African. And people are going to be like, okay. So Tamara said, it's okay. I don't know to if somebody has a samosa to like just grab it from the hand and eat it. That's not okay, guys. Ask. But that always stresses me out on some way. So I also want to say if somebody's opening up their platform for you, go in and take that space. Like it's something I'm really trying to practice, like eat it up. A man spread. Just open your legs as wide as possible and let your voice be heard. I recently spoke to someone that said to me, rather you than another man or another white person in the space where there is already representation of white people. I'm not saying white voices don't matter. I'm saying that in this space, um, I'm what's needed and I'm the person that it came to. So if that happens to you as a receiver of injustice, if somebody's opened the space, again, manspread. And the reason you're manspreading is so that when the next person of color comes in, you can close your legs a little bit and they can sit next to you and then both of you can manspread. And eventually there'll be a chain because geez, your story is so important. And I would never have thought my story as a South African living under apartheid would be important until I saw Trevor Noah go out into the world and Americans were so curious. I was like, but how did you not know about apartheid? And I'm not like picking on Americans. It's not just Americans. It's a lot of the world. Like they knew about it, but they don't know about it because they've never seen the person that lived under it. And you bringing those stories and like using up that space on the platform that somebody gives you. And then, like I said, opening up a channel for the next person, that is integral. Like, take up your space, sister and brothers. And manspread. I don't know why I keep on saying manspreading, but it's the word that's in my head.
I love that. And speaking about, I do, I love that. I think because it's just like taking up space and being, you know, you don't even think about it. You're entitled to that space. And so
Yeah.
I love that man spread because yeah, you're entitled to that space. You're entitled. And speaking about apartheid, because we've had this conversation, you and I, and I think we even shared some of it on the podcast. But can you tell people just a little bit about your experience? Because you're absolutely right. People do not have an understanding of what that was like.
Okay. Um, so I might have people who are the same age as me. So I'm 35, who are utterly South Africans, and I mean white South Africans, who are utterly confused when I say, like, I grew up under apartheid, because the official end to apartheid was in 1994 when we could all vote. But just because a policy and a system has been cancelled legally does not mean that it is not felt throughout. We still have in South Africa, and this is how we grew up, in racially segregated areas. So I grew up in an area that was Indian. My grandmother, who is of mixed race, was shifted from her Indian parents, then to her colored parents, and back again. And one of the tests they did to determine the color of her skin, because she was mixed race and they couldn't decide, was they put a pencil in her hair and it fell out or it didn't. And that's how they reclassified you. In South Africa, we have another race group. We have four race groups. Around the world, it's just like black, white, Asian, I guess. I don't know. I hope so. Not really. And we have another one called colored, which in some parts of the world is absolutely racist. But to us, it's a separate race group. So I have family who are colored, Indian, and black. And it is, even though we're family, it's still such a separator because coloreds listen to different music than blacks do and Indians do. And yes, there's culture, but we have a South African culture. I'm getting off topic. Um, so growing up in South Africa under apartheid meant that I grew up with a father who was definitely a freedom fighter and a mother who was very much believing white propaganda. So I grew up in this house where my mother was terrified of what was going to happen in a new South Africa, and my father was desperate for it to happen. But as soon as, or as recent as 2005, when my dad was alive, we were chased out of an area because it was a whites only area in the new South Africa. And as recent as 2023, my brother had a horrible experience where he was just judged based on the color of his skin and told to get out. And again, it's a democratic country. So those things still last, and how it affected me, and I'm talking a lot about it now, it feels like, is we didn't have freedom of movement. It was okay to racially assault us. It was okay to even assault us. We also had hierarchies, which meant that it was white, then colored, then Indian. Chinese people were treated differently from Indian people, and then it was Black people. And they ingrained that into our mentality. So an Indian person would say, geez, we have it tough, but not as tough as those Black people. And that was the intelligent design of apartheid. So it meant that I couldn't go to a school that was out of the area or that was better that my parents would want to send me to. I would have to go to the Indian school. And people couldn't marry across the color lines, of course. And if you did, in many places you were arrested. My favorite, it's not really my favorite, it's a horrible story, but it was very easy to also enter areas under different guises and just murder at will. And it was always about preventing uprisings. So that was the great life under apartheid. But I think if you hear the story of some South Africans today, they might speak a little bit differently about it because they might be white South Africans and their experience was different because they had electricity all the time and they lived in utter safety and they had jobs and the best jobs and they had unlimited labor and workforce that they, in lots of cases, didn't have to pay for. So if you had to speak to me as a South African and I'm like, yeah, stuff's hard, but it's better for us. White South African, I'm not saying all, certain ones might say, oh no. They even say that there's a genocide happening, and factually that is incorrect. Thank you very much. That's been my essay on apartheid.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for sharing that because I don't think people understand how much this has been going, like this has been going on for years. And it's different in different places. But regardless of where you are in the world, if you are different, you are separate. And they choose what those differences are, whether it's color of your skin, the book that you believe in, the person that you love, whatever it is, your physical appearance in some way, whether you're missing a leg, whatever it is, if you are different, you are separate. You are not fully included. And one of the things that came up, I think through Black Lives Matter in the States a few years ago, was really about our language and the language we use, and not even recognizing how our language has been whitewashed. Because, I'm a woman, I'm gay, I have neurodiversity, I have my own things, but I still am a person of privilege because of the color of my skin, right? And so recognizing even how our language has been whitewashed to disparage other races, people who are different in whatever way, has been a really interesting journey for me, because as a white person, I did not even recognize it until it was brought to my attention. And so I have tried really hard to change a lot of my language because of that. And I think this is the important part in this, is about the learning. It's like, well, that's the way it's always been. Okay, but that doesn't make it right. So if we know that it's a problem, why would we not try to do something different? And just because it's not a problem for us, for me, for you, doesn't mean it's not a problem for somebody. And if it is a problem for somebody, we need to pay attention to that. That's an important part.
I always like to think like when people say, "Oh, it's always been like that." Oh, that never used to be offensive when I was a kid. Okay, great. But again, life changes. And secondly, I give you the benefits of the doubt. I believe you're extremely capable and intelligent and able to make that change. And it doesn't mean you're not going to slip up. I mean, me, myself, first of all, I use language that's still whitewashed because I haven't had all the opportunities in the world to change it, to hear it, whatever. I do it too. I think a lot of people of color, it's ingrained into us as well because that's the education systems we needed to use. But my example here is I used to have a little bit of a fear when I used to speak to trans people because I was so scared to use the wrong pronoun or whatever. And it's not like, oh, well, I don't know what to say anymore. No, it's not that. I just didn't want to hurt the person. But what was more hurtful to the trans person that I was talking to was that I somehow managed to avoid using the pronoun throughout the many conversations. And then I said, well, this is what I'm afraid of. And I'm like, but then all you say is self-correct. So if I say they instead of he or she, it's normally they that English-wise, that I struggle with. Not because it's not available in English, by the way. It makes a lot of sense in English because my English, yeah. So speaking, and then every time you make a mistake, don't say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm such a terrible person. Just say they and carry on. And no person is going to come and, God forbid, oh my God, nobody's going to do that. Take a spear and put it into your heart. Because we all make mistakes, yo. And that's the best part about like breaking free of that stuff. It's made me so much more comfortable to have this conversation with other people and say, okay, what are your problems? If I make a mistake, and they're like, make a mistake, you make a mistake. We just carry on and don't make it about yourself. And I think it has made my brain better because I had to learn a new way of speaking. And I have to always, in the conversation, not be scared, but be aware. And I think it makes me a better listener. And I think that's such a cool way to look at it, that if I have to change my language pattern, I am actually helping my brain. So yeah, language is powerful, yo. Never forget it. That's why languages are eradicated or changed or other languages are used, because as much as we are primal speakers and we can use grunts, language is what defines things and makes those barriers and parameters in your mind.
I think that's a really good point that you made, about language and pronouns in particular, but about language, because in English, it is absolutely easy, right? They or theirs or whatever it is. We do it all the time. It's just that we've decided that it's difficult because we don't like what somebody's doing or we're struggling with it. We've really made our culture about making certain people comfortable. So, we shouldn't change our pronouns or it be expected because it makes me uncomfortable. But what about the person that you're mislabeling? Women shouldn't speak up because it makes men uncomfortable. Women shouldn't, well, the whole gender thing, don't even get me started. There's so many places in our language where stopped or it's like it's too much because it makes somebody else uncomfortable. And we often move through this world in a way like we're always looking out for somebody else, especially as women. We're always looking out, like we don't want to upset somebody else. We don't want to make it too difficult for someone else. We are going to put ourselves at risk even. How many women are murdered or raped because they don't want to be rude? Are you kidding me? Let me claw your eyes out. I'm going to be rude. But that's not what we're taught. We are not taught that. We are taught to take it because we can't be rude. And so language has become so powerful in such a way that for an oppressor, it absolutely works in their favor because people don't want to speak out against the things. And this is the conversations we're having today and why it would be considered a difficult conversation, because we're speaking out about things that people don't want to think about. Let's just shove it in a corner and pretend it's not there.
I have two trains of thought, and one is I wonder if people do this because historically the people that have decided to foist upon us these ideas of inequality, etc., etc., if you obey them, that's how you survive. You get money or whatever's important in the system that you're in, approval, and that's why people were doing it. But I would love to feel that we have evolved past that. I don't think we have, but I think we have the ability to evolve past that. The second thing is I also immediately think about likes and dislikes, which is something I've been thinking about a lot. It's because I don't like to change or I don't like to do the work. And it sounds very belligerent if you just put it and boil it down to that, because sometimes you'll say, oh, it's really difficult for me. But if you actually like go down to the roots of the thing, you just don't like to. And you can only control what you do. Yeah. So if you say, well, if I need to stop calling somebody by their pronouns, by the incorrect pronouns, why can't they just ease up and allow me to call them what I want? Like, dude, just you can only worry about yourself and change yourself. And like that's this whataboutism. It's something that like really sounds so childish to me. And then I always think, okay, what are you telling me? You dislike this. It's not even like this thing of it is uncomfortable, it makes me sweat, I don't want to look stupid. You just don't like it. And I know that's maybe a very ungenerous, maybe that approach lacks generosity, but I also find it in myself. When I don't want to do something, it's because I just don't like it. And I need to really sit and be honest with myself why I don't like it and if it's actually beneficial for any receiver in the room if it involves someone else. Hey.
Yeah.
It just like suddenly hit me like sometimes that's all you gotta do too, yeah? Just gotta shake your head.
Just shake your head. There's nothing else. It's so funny that you were just saying that. We were having a conversation last night, my wife and I. Well, and my best friend was up for her birthday, and my wife decided to rearrange the cupboard. And I have autism and ADHD, so I have very specific ways that things have to be. And so she's rearranging the cupboard and she's mixing the glasses and the cup, like everything's getting. And I was like, oh my God. And so I'm freaking out. And my friend is like, what difference does it make? Like, just put them, the ones you're going to use. And I'm like, okay, like in theory, I get it. I get it. Right. And so I said, I'm going to just take a step back and figure out how I can work this out in my brain because logically I get it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But my neurodiversity is saying, no, no, can't be done that way. I'm going to just take a step back. So I took a step back and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to have to learn to live with it. And my wife, she's so good. She's so good with me. And she's like, no, because it's going to like be an issue for you every time. She said, I recognize that you're trying, but why do you need to try here? Like, this is not the place you need to try. And so we talked about it and we came up with something that would work for all of us. It was perfect. But it opened that conversation then about the inability to make changes. Like my brain is literally fighting with me. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to try. I'm going to try this because that's how much I want to make change, right? Like I want to be a better person. I want to be more, I don't want to be that roadblock for other people. But I also sometimes forget then the self-care because it's something that's ingrained in us as women, you know, the self-care part. And having other loving people around you, then you can start to have those conversations and go, okay, but maybe that, you know, together we can do that thing. So it's not like, you know, when people say they don't like something or they don't want to do something or whatever reason they give, ultimately they don't want to do something. It's, can we have a conversation then and come to an understanding? I'm not saying, yes, you can call me by my incorrect pronouns, but maybe if we can have a conversation, we can come to an understanding of why this is important to me and why you have a problem with it, right? Opening the doors to conversations, I think, is a really important part. Not everybody's going to do that. I get it. Mm-hmm. It's allowing people to have their differences and just really being open to, it's not all about you, but also, can we just talk about it? Can we just talk about it?
So that's to me is the healing with love aspect. And again, like maybe in this point in time, I feel neurologically, if you're having an issue with something, and I did not know you were a fellow ADHD sufferer. Let's talk about surfboards and penguins. Yeah, okay, go back. So, it's very different, I think, from upholding things that actively, I don't want to say kill people, but it is kill people, actively cause loss of life. So you not being okay with the glasses, that's your wife showing you your partner. I'm sorry if I said.
No, my wife.
You guys are married.
In theory, we've tried.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry.
The pandemic
no,
tried so many times. No, I do color my wife. I do color my wife because we have tried numerous times, and the pandemic kept getting in the way, and finally we gave up. It's just my wife. We're not going to spend the money.
I mean, you can take this out, but the church would be so upset with you, Larissa. How dare you?
Against sin.
You need to marry your wife.
Just no winning. Just no winning.
Okay. So your wife showed you the empathy and love, and I respect her for that because I think in some ways she also understands you have a different kind of work that you need to do. If you're going to be stressing about the glasses, you probably wouldn't be all here for the conversation that we might have. I mean, I'm not saying that's how your ADHD works or your autism, but my ADHD works like that. There's something currently in my house that's been on my mind all the time. It doesn't make sense, but you know what? Fine. Mm-hmm. But when I think about like these conversations, I 100% agree with you, like open up the conversations, but also be very aware, like even if you are neurodivergent and you, for some reason, don't want to call somebody by the right name, or you don't want to, I don't want to tell you who to vote for. That's not what I'm here for. But if you want to actively pursue things that endanger the lives of others, like I struggle to accept that as just being you being neurodivergent, because we've got lots of work that we can do. We've got therapists, we've got journaling, we've got art. We can do all of the stuff, my friend. And when you say open up conversation, that is, I think, one of the best ways to do it. But I just want to like caveat for anybody that's here, not online. Like this is different because we're talking to each other, but not online in a comment section. You will never see the gates of heaven or hell. You're just going to be stuck in purgatory. I can count, I would say five instances where I saw other strangers having a conversation where they came to something, but me myself online, because I think so much can be misconstrued and misunderstood, it doesn't work. But another thing that I use when I have difficulty having conversations, because I don't speak to that many people, is I kind of immerse myself in the other person's life by watching their content or watching something that they take part in. So a very good example here is Dungeons and Dragons. I watched a campaign with a wonderful person called Ali, and I have seen Ali change and transform through all of these seasons. And Ali is the person that made me feel so much more comfortable with trans people, not because I didn't feel they weren't valid before, but feeling comfortable to see beyond that layer. That's just like for some people it's important, but what I'm trying to say is Ali is not just trans. Ali is everything and an excellent D&D player. And I feel that having that opened me so much more. And watching another D&D campaign with drag queens. I have not watched drag a day in my life. I saw what was happening and I didn't believe it was right. But after watching that, I'm like, you know what? I might actually go and become a citizen of America and go and protest because they are amazing. And that's what I feel can open up because we both love D&D and now we're in it. And I'm like, geez, just normal, absolutely awesome person. You don't just have the right to exist. I need you to exist. Um, and I think that's just another way. If you can't get people to talk to, watch people. We all like watching stuff on the tube. Go and do that. Indulge in that. It's very healing.
I love that because, instead of leaving a comment, just watch. Just watch for a little bit and see what is it that, because trolls love that, right? That, but hiding behind in the anonymity of it, really. But if you can just watch what people are saying, what people are doing, and then really think about how does this affect you? How does your hate affect them? Right? Like I have a nonprofit, Queer Voices, that was started out of the fact that the LGBT plus community, the youth have an eight times higher suicide rate. And the reason for that is this hate, right? And so we 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 have children and we say, as long as they're healthy, it doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. We just want them to be happy and healthy. And then they grow up and they don't behave in the way that we want them to behave. And all of a sudden, we're going to kick them out the door. We don't care if they're dead or alive. I just can't even fathom this, right? I can't even fathom this. And then to make it even worse, you walk down the street just minding your own business, but you look a certain way. And now you're getting, right? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So when we say the things and we think we're justified in saying things, we just had a local incident where somebody was taking a video of a crosswalk being painted. They were doing a pride crosswalk, and a man just like started berating him and just calling him horrible, horrible things. And of course, he was recording a video, so he put it up on social media and it just blew up. And it started a lot of really good conversations. But of course, then the other trolls have to come out. But it's like he was there minding his own business. You don't know if he's gay or straight. You think he was gay because of the way he looks, but you don't know. And you just thought it was okay to like totally call him names and threaten his life and all of these things. what was he doing to you? Like, I don't even know. I don't even understand this, right? And this is the part I get stuck in is I don't understand the thinking. I don't understand it. And your color of your skin. How does that hurt me that your skin is a different color? Why does that make you less valuable? I truly do not even understand this. And please don't feel the need to explain it to me because I really don't think you have the answer. Um, don't feel the need. But like
Oh God.
I
Hey, you know what? I want to know. Okay, hit me up.
just like uh, according
I
to science, DNA, 99.87 or something like that of every person is the same. It's like 0.03 or something.
I I honestly like I think if we try to understand it, I think that's an impossible thing. I think we can say what we think it comes from, but you and I will never be able to understand it. And it is definitely fear, things that you were taught. It's also about money and power. Um, those two things are not like exclusive to the other. Like you can have both, or one. Generally, money is power, though. So that's where I think it comes from. But also, it's not right in the society. No matter which way you stand, whatever, going and abusing someone on the street and screaming stuff at them. I think if you ask any kid in a home, unless they grow up in a home where that's how they're treated, but even them, I think in your little heart, you know that doesn't feel good. So it can't be nice. It can't be the thing we're supposed to do. And I think that as society, we know that it's not right. I just always wonder why people feel empowered to do that. Like, I always say, if you want to be racist in your own home, like inside your private house, like that's okay. I mean, I am not going to come and eat dinner anyway. But when you decide to attack me in a public space, I don't know what to feel for you. And I try to feel empathy, as I said, because it helps me move on as a person sometimes. But other times I'm just like, you are a fool. And you do foolish things, sir. Um, and that's the end of it. But yeah, I don't think you and I are going to understand it. And nobody can explain it properly. Um, I always like to think we all come from Africa, and I don't know if that's still scientifically true or not. I think it is. But we all come from the same place, from the place that I live in, okay? And we all come from the same, like, cradle of humankind. Um, and I get that we all grew up in these different cultures, but what is it that makes somebody think that their culture or their way of living is superior? It can only be these aspects of power, that you don't have to toil and somebody can toil for you, or that you can treat someone the way you want to. I don't think it's innate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think because we're seeing such polarization now, especially. I mean, we have in history as well, but we are seeing it. And I do think a lot of it comes down to that openness or that rigidity that it has to be this way. We cannot change from this way. Whether it's working for me or not, it has to be this way. And if you have that openness, you start to see where it's a problem. And when you don't have that openness, when you're so rigid in your thinking, you can't see past that. And so, I can't make somebody else think something. I can't make somebody else be more loving or hate less or any of those things. I can share information, and hopefully if there's a little crack in that that wall that they have, they might see some light. And maybe it's just one aspect. Maybe it's, um, I don't know, that person with no legs has, the ability to do other things as opposed to being useless and a drain on society. Maybe, or the person who doesn't have money has worth and not a. It's because it's fascinating to me how people have these labels that have value attached to them?
You know, I think very often it comes from the system, and this is what you've said. It's just in a different way. The system that they subscribe to, when you don't subscribe to it, whether you want to or you just cannot, it is painful for the person because, for example, to be a fat person existing in this world, living your life, but I'm on a diet, I'm going to the gym, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. How dare you not do the same things that I do? How dare you just be happy the way you are? You need to subscribe to the system I am subscribing to. You need to be paying the money that I am. Because if you're not, why am I doing it? And I always think that's kind of part of the logic. So I've got my hands and my feet. I hate my job, which is, I don't know, stepping on grapes the whole day. I just step on grapes and make wine. I hate it. But you know what? I'm better than you because you don't have feet. That means you can't do this. I think people do those things to make themselves feel better. The other thing I would like to say is you said that maybe there's some crack. I used to be a blockhead of notes. Like, I don't know how many sides to a block. I was a cube. Um, and in many ways. And sometimes I would hear the same message like multiple times from different people, and I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I'm young. Get the hell out of my room, guys. And then it wasn't just maturity, but it was hearing it from somebody else that I had like a sliver of respect from. And suddenly the message penetrated. So somebody might listen to this conversation and neither have respect for you, Larissa, I'm sorry, or for me, but they could listen to another conversation and respect you, particularly on that day. Maybe you look different. I don't know. Maybe you did a updo and that's what they're into. Or your guest. And then that's the conversation that would speak to them. And I would say to the person then who's listening and is just really getting annoyed with this, it doesn't mean you should stop listening to these conversations. Listen to as many as you can. But for every point, you might have a counterpoint to, because I feel a lot of people sometimes listen to stuff to have counterpoints. Try and ask yourself like one reason why it might be true or valid. Because I think just for selfish reasons, not because I want you to be loving, but for your own brain, my best friend, it will just help your brain. It will help you think differently. And you will get better at racism. I guarantee you will get better at racism, and that's why you should do it. But also, I'd like to believe that many of the people who are watching this came here because they're interested in these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel a little bit like somebody would be listening.
Yes.
To you
yes.
and to me.
I love that. I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. I love talking to you. We always have such amazing conversations. So I do want to say thank you. Is there any final thoughts before we go?
There is, and I hope I can make it quick. I do want to say if you're watching this as somebody who has a platform, that I know it's a lot of hard work to curate your platform and to keep it there, but always try and make sure that it's a safe space for the people you want to include. I'm a part of many platforms, and some of them I don't feel safe on, not because I feel threatened, but because of what people might say and how people pack on and are like, oh, that's awesome. You just called this painting of a Native American cute little Indian. And I'm like, they're not Indian. I am. How dare you? But I don't have strength to fight that, and I'm not going to fight that on some days. So if you have your platforms and you're really interested in diversity, make sure that you're curating or moderating it in a way not to like slap people on the wrist, but to say, hey, there's better words for this. And the second part is ask for feedback. My friends who have platforms and are doing things like what you're doing, having diversity and including diverse voices. At the end of it all, you have done a good job because you've opened the platform, yeah? But as much as I want you to feel proud of yourself and I want you to pat yourself on the back, sometimes it might not have gone as well as you think it has. And you need to ask these people that have been on your platform or who subscribe to your platform, who you're trying to cater for, how do you think it went? What can I do better? And don't take that personally, it's just data, just like your emotions. And take that data and work on it. Some things, sure, they won't be valid. But if 20 out of 30 people are saying, it made me really uncomfortable when that one guest said, all Indian people like curry. We do though. So that's a bad example. Um, then you can say, okay, so maybe we should say, well, Indian people like curry and I don't know, Sunday roast. Yes, we also like Sunday roasts. So that's the only two things I would like to say. If you can even just get the feedback thing right, then you can even sort out the platform. Yes, that's been my hot take.
I love it. Thank you. It's a really good point though, because I know I try really hard, but I'm learning, right? I have my own biases about things. I have my own blinders on about things because it's not been my experience. And so I'm constantly learning. When Black Lives Matter was a thing, and I did so much reading and was like, whoa, how did I not notice this? How did I not notice these things? When the Me Too movement, I again was doing so much reading. And it's like, as a woman who's been sexually assaulted, how did I not know about some of these things? So every time that something's brought to my awareness, I try to learn more. And I think it's a really good point to ask the people you're inviting into your space what they think, right? Is this truly a safe space? Is this, or if people are leaving, don't just be like, okay, bye. It's like, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? Is there something we can do differently? Those sort of things I think are really important.
You said like you have your own like bias, and I want to say, do you also think that Indian people like curry? But I think you know that we do. Uh,
I like curry.
no,
So
everybody likes curry. Um, Someone said something that if you're creating an inclusive space, it automatically becomes or feels exclusive to others. And I think that is also something that you, as my, can I say we're friends? As
yeah.
my darling friend, who is one of my allies, and I love speaking to you, and I feel so comfortable doing it. Um, I would like to leave that with you because, especially if I think about that other the thing you told me about the male, you're creating an inclusive space, and that automatically means some people will feel excluded, not because of what you're doing, but because of their beliefs. Yeah. And before we go, thank you for having me and thank you for inviting me. And I really, I'm going to say love. I love you so much. You're amazing, and I'm always thankful just to be in your orbit.
Oh, I love you so much too. I really do. I love our conversations. And yeah, and I know we're on the same page, and it's easy to have conversations with people you're on the same page, but I also think that we are able to both look at things and go, oh, okay, I hadn't really seen it exactly that way, or I didn't think of that. And I love that part that you're open and willing to have those conversations. You know, I invited people to this platform thinking everybody would want to step up and have these conversations because I wanted to. That was not the experience. And so I am very grateful that you were here and willing to be open and have a conversation with me. I am very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this interview. This interview was part of our Healing with Love Summit, which includes healing practices with each interview. If you're interested in learning more or purchasing the full summit with interviews and healing exercises, click the link below. Remember that it is a choice how we move through this world. Choose love, love heals.